Now that we've established that's a telephone. Catching up from last week we talked about the call of Samuel. In confirmation, kids, how many times did we call Samuel? Right, 3, exactly. Wow, see? Yeah, that's right. Okay, now we have the ark that's captured. The Philistines are going up to battle against the Israelites. They're just tearing them apart. Israelites think, hey, let's bring the ark out, have God lead us in battle. Well, they bring the ark out, the Philistines still just clobber them. And then they take the ark with them back to the Philistia. Well, then we have the Philistines and the ark. The ark gets moved from place to place to place. Interesting story. The god Dagon, who the Philistines worshipped, is in the same room with the ark. Let's put it next to Dagon, our god. So they put the ark there. The next morning they come by and here's Ashdod face down in front of the ark. Wasn't that interesting? Let's put him back up. They put him back up. The next day they come. Dagon is down. His hands are gone, missing, cut off. All there's is just a trunk of this idol face down in front of the ark, and so they get scared. And so they say, well, let's send it to another place. So they send it to another town. Well, before that, they get tumors and all kinds of things. They said, well, maybe this ark is not such a good idea. So they take it to another town. Tumors happen. Send it to another town in Philistia. Tumors happen again. So the Philistines are going, hey, this is not a good idea. They bring the priests in. They bring the diviners. Diviners say, you know what? It's because you have the ark. Maybe if you send it back to Israel, we'll be taken care of. Maybe we'll be healed. And by the way, let's put some gold in there as a guilt offering for taking their ark and give it back to Israel. So they load it up on a cart, take 2 cows that have never been yoked before, so they're hoping the cows would be like wandering all over the place, back to Israel. Well, no, the cows go straight into Israel with the ark and return the ark. And then Israel saying, well, you know what? Samuel, guess what? Eli's sons were not the only ones that screwed up. Samuel, your sons are screwing up too, and you appoint them as judges over us? There's some names there I can't, maybe Lydia can pronounce these names better than I can. Joel and Abijah. Okay, that's it. So they determined these 2 guys aren't fit to be judges. We want a king. And Samuel said, you sure you want a king? They said, we want a king. Everybody else has got a king. How come we can't have a king? We want a king too. This sounded like Weinerville, but anyway. So God is saying, you know what? Tell them if they get the king, this is what they get too. The king is going to demand, a tenth of your property. They're going to demand you put kids into service. They're going to make slaves. All these things that are not good because you have a king. Plus the fact that, hey, aren't I the king? God, the king, don't you follow me? And you're going to appoint some. Okay, fine. If you want to make the mistake of having a king, go ahead. So then Samuel anoints Saul as the king. Saul is a good-looking guy. They said he's the best-looking guy in the whole county. He's a foot tall. He was a head taller than everybody else. I mean, he's primo, you would think, right? Well, it doesn't work out that way. And it's kind of interesting why he gets rejected as king. He does okay for a while, then God says, you've got to go to the Amalekites and just wipe everything out. Just destroy people, things. Don't take a thing. Just make sure it's all. Well, Saul goes and destroys all the people. Yet he goes, these cows, sheep, sometimes they're pretty valuable. Let's just take those. Keep them. Well, God points out to Samuel and says, well, he's not obeying me, so out you go. So Saul is no longer king, right? As far as God is concerned. So now, the story comes, as Lydia read, quite nicely, thank you, Lydia, that Samuel's appointed to anoint another king. And here we have David. Can you imagine from his perspective, here's this kid in Bethlehem somewhere, 10 off in the back 40 somewhere, and gets this call from his dad. Hey, David, come here a second. I want you to do something for me. Well, surprise, surprise. I can imagine Jesse's kind of stunned too. Thinks Samuel's coming there to rout them as well. But no, Samuel says, no, it's okay. I'm coming to make sacrifices and, come with me. So he said, Jesse, one of your sons is going to be king. I want to see them all. Jesse goes, really? I got 8 of them. Okay, bring them out from oldest, because that's what, you got to start with the oldest because that's just the law. The oldest, and he goes all the way to the youngest, and Samuel goes, well, no, well, no. 7 times. And Jesse's going, well, you got the best. Now, I do have another son, but he's, 12, 13. He's really young. He's out in the sheep, You don't want to see him right now because he's been out there for a few days. So you probably don't want to see him right away. No, bring him. So he brings in David. David's a good-looking kid, and God says, yep, that's the one. Why didn't you just say it so in the first place? It could have saved me a lot of time with these other 7 guys. But anyway, he picks David. Out of all the 7, the youngest. Probably the most unlikely because it doesn't. All he says was good-looking. The other guys were sharp. They had a lot of stuff going for him. But David, pretty untested. Probably just had what people's skills did he have? He was with sheep all day long. So, again, an unlikely candidate. Again, God is a little confusing that way because I'm not sure how this all works. So, David gets picked. Rips his life apart, doesn't it? I mean, if you and I were to all of a sudden get a call from somebody and say, we want you to do something totally different than what you've been doing, and we want you to move to a different place, and I know you're young and probably, but still. His life has changed forever. The people around him's life has changed forever. Israel's identity has changed forever. A lot of things change now with this simple calling of a simple shepherd in the middle of nowhere. And this is how God does it. I mean, there weren't any, David didn't have his campaign managers sending out flyers and doing news clips, with rocks against the stones like that. He didn't have anything like that. He didn't have a lot of money in campaigning all over the country. He didn't have a lot of things that we do today for office. But God just called him. We do that in the church too. We pick those pastors who we think will be best to be our bishops. And you don't really usually campaign, I want to be bishop, here's my resume, send out flyers, news clips, and everything else, and you're saying, well, I'm not so sure they're probably going to be the best bishops for the job because I think they want it a little bit too much. So you pick the one who goes, what? No, I don't want to be bishop. There's no way that I want to do this. What a bunch of headaches. You're going to put out fires all day long. You're going to do this, that, the other thing. And you're going to be spread out 57 different ways. And you always be on the chopping block. Who wants to do that? Well, the people have spoken. And a lot of prayers involved. I remember when Bishop Jeff was chosen, he was saying there's an acceptance. And then he said, whoa. He said, I just had a thought. I've got to say goodbye to my congregation after 17 years. And he cried. Whoa. He was called, and at first it was exciting news, and then he found out the reality of it. He's got to leave his beloved parish. Not easy to do. Not easy to do, and I'm sure David had to leave everything behind that he knew for something he had no idea what was involved with. Maybe he saw what Saul was going on, but I doubt it because he's probably in a different land in the middle of nowhere, like I said. But God has a way of doing these things. For all of us, sometimes we just do unexpected things we don't expect. The confirmation kids, are you getting all this now, or is it, no? All right. I'll try to be a little bit more unclear. And we'll talk on Wednesday afternoon, see what you really thought of that. So anyway, David gets ripped out of his life because of a simple calling. A lot of us are in the same position. But then a lot of us are so entrenched in what we do and where we are that we can't even think of answering a call that might be different than what we think. Yeah. I can imagine in David's day if they had one of these. Yeah? One of these simple little devices now. When I was a kid, we had the rotary, of course, rotary dial. And what did they call it? It was, didn't have private lines. Have a private line was party lines, yes. Hi, Mrs. Joe. Oh, excuse me a second. Did you get all that, Joe? Yeah. Things have progressed, haven't they? The phone rings. Hello? Yeah. No, I'm not really interested. Thank you. No, not really. No, thank you. No, thank you. I'm not interested. Oh, my gosh. But now, ring, 212 area code. Who do I know in New York? Nobody. Maybe it's not a good idea to answer it. caller ID. Huh. Just think if it was David, or somebody. G-O-D. Let's see. I'm not so sure about this one. Yes, hello? You sure? Oh, man. That's hard. But we can choose who we accept the call from. God's not so simple. Sometimes God's calling pokes us in the back of the head until we respond and say, okay, fine, I'll get it done. I'll do what you ask. Even though it's something you hadn't even thought of in all your years. And another point with all of this, we accept a calling sometimes from God which we don't expect. And what does that calling involve? Does it involve mission in any way? And if so, if it involves mission, where is the mission located? What's the nature of the mission of your calling? Is it to serve people in this community here? Is it to serve people in the Milwaukee area, South Dakota, Guatemala? Where is your mission? God points you to a place. And we may not all have the same callings. That's great. We have different callings. There's lots of different needs everywhere in the country and the world. But choosing to answer those callings that's the tough one. We see the G-O-D on the line and say, well, do we really want to pick that up? Because more often than not, things are going to change for me, kind of maybe in an uncomfortable way. I may have to move. I may have to change careers. Things might be dicey financially for a while. I'm not sure what to expect. I may not get my spouse may not get a job for a long time. It's going to be tight. We don't have any friends over there. Just a lot of things can happen. It may not be that extreme, but sometimes it is. But do you accept the call? I don't know. And God was searching far and wide to find David from a different area. He wasn't right where they were. Samuel had to travel to find the right person for the right calling. God saw the potential in David that no one else could see. Jesse didn't even consider him in the lineup. Jesse didn't even consider him as one of the 7 or one of the 8 to parade in front of Samuel. So no one had an idea, but God had this idea that David would be good. And there's more written in the Bible about King David than anybody else. But of course, we know that David had his faults as well, many of them. But God saw the potential. God's calling wasn't not right. Two negatives. The other sons of Jesse, the ones who weren't called to be king, what happened to them? Perhaps they had their own calling. Nothing said about that because right now and the biblical writers are focusing on David and the line of David. But the other brothers, I'm sure they had their own callings. Perhaps you shouldn't be a claims adjuster for State Farm. Maybe that's not your calling. Maybe it's thinking what your calling is, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's something else. Finding your calling can be a difficult thing. Because these sons weren't chosen to be king didn't mean they were unchosen by God for anything. God may have called them to a different place, a different type of work, a different mission, a different ministry of sorts. Like all of us. Just because I'm not elected president of the United States doesn't mean I'm worthless and can't do anything. Perhaps I'm called to be Secretary of State or something else that might suit my needs better or my gifts better. Maybe God's calling me to something else. But to be able to listen, to focus, to discern, sometimes with the help of other people, as sounding boards, close friends. But God calls frequently and often. And sometimes we don't hear it, but it's there. Sometimes it just needs a little push. Sometimes you need an experience to set everything on motion, on fire. Sometimes that's all it takes. But God is calling. That's the point. God is calling all of us for something. Whether we respond or not, whether we pick up the phone that says G-O-D or not. But God is calling.